It's good to see everybody here again. And glad everybody's able to get out. Let's continue to pray for the ones that are in the hospital and dealing with different things, and that the hospitals are able to get work through everything. Hear, O hear, Israel. That call is a call to Israel, saying, listen up. Anytime there's two words, they repeat a word like that in the Old Testament. Hear, O hear, or truly, truly. It means, hear, O hear means listen up. You're going to hear something important that you need to hear. Or truly, truly means that this is the truth. Today's sermon, listen up. I've got it based in John chapter 4, verses 4 through 26. And it's about the woman at the well, the first part of it. And this is a sermon that kind of goes along with the Go Tell, or Gospel to Every Home initiative that we're participating in for our church. And it's provided in some of the materials. I don't have the sermon exactly as it was presented, but some of the ideas come out of it. But it's the same scripture. And the sermon was written by Curtis Woods, who's the lead pastor of Severns Valley Baptist Church up in Elizabethtown. And he opened his outline with on the following. The book of Proverbs offers believers wisdom for the journey of life. One area where Proverbs speaks candidly involves communication. Proverbs 18, verse 13 says, the one who gives an answer before he listens, this is foolishness and disgrace for him. And then down in verse 17, it reads, the first to state his case seems right until another comes and cross-examines him. Now, what do both of those Proverbs teach us? Answer is simple. Wise people don't yell, and they listen well. They listen before they either ask another question or before they give a response. Now, in our scripture today, verse 4, it opens with Jesus heeding or listening to God. Verses 4 through 6 read, and he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. Very first opening, he must needs to go through Samaria. he was on his way into Galilee. And there were about 3 different routes he could take. One was along the coast. One was crossing over Jordan and then coming on down. Or, and this is according to Josephus, the Jewish historian, going through Samaria was the most direct route. However, during that time, Jews looked down on Samaritans. Jews would not associate with them. They would not talk to them. They would not eat with them or do business with them. The Samaritans at this time had descended from Jews that had married with people of that region and chose to stay in colonies set up by the king of Assyria after the captivity of the 10 tribes, which we can read about in the Old Testament, when the tribes were in captivity. Some of the Jews went back to Jerusalem and rebuilt it, but then there was others that stayed and married with the locals and stayed in that area. And the ones that went to Jerusalem looked down on the ones that stayed and intermingled with blood, because the Jews are the chosen race. And they felt that the Jews that stayed behind and intermarried with the locals, they were polluting the blood, polluting the Jewish ancestry line. But they wouldn't do anything with the Samaritans then. But Jesus was listening to God, because he specifically went through Samaria. He didn't take the longer routes around to bypass Samaria. He specifically went through. And as we've read about Jesus and learned about Jesus, his way of doing things was a little unorthodox. He went against the grain of some of the traditions of that time. And this is one of them. And Jesus was still listening to God. Getting down into verse 7. When he speaks to the woman that came to the well. Now this is about noontime. The way they count time is 6 o'clock in the morning was first hour, and so 6 hours would be around noon. The way they kept track of time. And so, just like here, noon is the hottest time of the day to be out walking or doing anything. Most people want to stay inside. Well, they were the same way. But yet, Jesus was out traveling the road, going to Galilee. And it was around noon. And this woman came to the well. Now, usually, when they went to the well, they would do that early in the morning, when it was still cool, and there were several people around that could help. But for this woman, she had to go at noon because of some of her background. And they gave her 3 strikes. She was considered an outcast of society. Because first, she was a Samaritan. She was of low class. Working girl of some type, possibly prostitute. Not really for sure, but we just, the way it's written, the way we study things, that's what we think. And the third one, she was a woman. Because back then, men did not talk directly to a woman. They would talk through the husband. But Jesus, and for a devout Jew, that was 3 strikes against that person, against this woman, so she would not even be talked to by a man. And that's the reason she was going to the well at noon, is because somebody like that, she was possibly known around town, people knew her, and they would snicker behind her back about her when she would go early in the morning when all the other women were there getting water. They'd probably snicker and talk bad about her. And it'd be loud enough where she could hear it. And so in order to avoid all that, she just would go at noon when nobody was there. Jesus ignored all of that. He spoke to her and asked her to give him some water. And she said, this is in verse 9. The woman answered, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. And then Jesus answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked of him, and he would give thee living water. She asked him, how, you're a Jew, but yet you're talking to me. Society doesn't do that. What's going on? Then after that, the woman answered, sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? And here she was thinking in a physical realm, a physical need, because it was at noon. Jesus had been traveling. He was weary from traveling, walking. And the disciples had gone on into town to buy food so they could eat. And they were in town when all this was taking place. And Jesus didn't have anything for the woman to let down into the well, pull up the water. And like I said, she was thinking in a physical realm. Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us this well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? Jacob of the Old Testament. is the one that this well was named for. He had given it to his children, and it was passed on down through the line. And they called it Jacob's Well in remembrance of that. Verse 13. Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. Meaning the well of Jacob, the water from the well of Jacob. Just like when we get water out of our taps. We drink that, we're satisfied for the month, but we eventually become thirsty again. Jesus continues, But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman was thinking from a physical standpoint. A need, bodily need, from being weary, whatever. But Jesus is pointing to the spiritual need. We need to draw from that well. And she responds, and she's still thinking in a physical sense. Verse 15. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Again, like I said, she was still thinking physical. He was going to give her water where she would never have to go to the well at noon and draw water again. She would never thirst. She would never have a need for water. But that is not the type of water Jesus was talking about. Because Jesus is talking about spiritual needs. Then Jesus kind of flips on her. Says, Go, call thy husband and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. And that saidst thou truly. Jesus confronted her. She was living with another man that was not her husband. She'd been divorced or widowed 5 times. We don't know the exact background of each one of those stories. But she had had 5 husbands. And she was living with somebody else that was not married to her. And the woman said unto Jesus, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. She's kind of trying to get the focus off of her and onto something else, dealing with her husbands. And the Jews are saying Jerusalem is the only place to worship God. You must come to Jerusalem. But the fathers of the ancestors of this woman, the Jews that had stayed back after captivity and intermarried with the locals, they set up their own temple on Mount Gerizim, which is mentioned shortly. And they said, this is where we worship. But the Jews said, no, Jerusalem is the true place of worship. Where you're worshiping is false. So, Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Here he was telling her that, yes, Jerusalem is the place to worship. Here in this temple, you don't know what you're worshiping. Jerusalem is the place of true worship, but there's going to be coming a time when you won't worship at either place. You'll be worshiping somewhere else. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So, worship of God is you worship in your spirit, and you worship in the truth. And then the woman answers Jesus. I know that Messiah is coming, which is called Christ. When he is come, he would tell us all things. Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. He had just told her everything about the living water, about her sin, and about true worship, just like they believed the Messiah would. And he said, I am the Messiah. Now, a couple things I want you to notice. Throughout this whole discussion, the way the woman responded to Jesus. There were times she was curt, discourteous, didn't really respect him in the way she answered. But as they went through each stage, she changed a little bit. Even though she was still thinking in the physical realm. And she tried to change the subject, like I said, when Jesus confronted her about her living situation. Now notice what Jesus did. How he responded to her. First, he listened. He listened to what she said. He did not cut her off in mid-sentence. He did not try to talk over her. Second thing he did, he listened. He did not yell at her. Third thing he did, he listened. He did not say to the woman, get away from me. You're too much of a sinner. I cannot forgive you. He didn't say that. Instead, he listened. said that I that speak unto thee am he. I am the Messiah that you speak of. And we need to listen to Jesus. As I was preparing this, it reminded me of the old RCA advertisement. They had one of these old record players with the big horn for the speaker. And a little puppy facing it with its ear cocked up, turned towards the speaker. And it was written under it, listening for the master's voice. Of course, they were trying to sell their records and equipment, saying that they were the best, but that's a good illustration. The puppy was sitting there waiting, listening for the master's voice. How often do we not listen? Or how often do we respond negatively to somebody instead of waiting to hear what they say? How often do we tell them they're a sinner and to get away from us? We don't need you. You're beyond saving. Jesus didn't do any of that. So why should we? He listened and he responded appropriately with love and the truth. So, as we were out this week, be wise. Don't yell at people. Listen before you speak. Listen to what they're saying. God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. Why? That means we need to listen and think before we respond. And so, as we come to the close of the service, if you want to join our church, make a confession of faith, confess something to God, the altar down there will be open. Yeah. And as we get ready to sing, I'll be down here in front. If you want to talk, we'll talk.